I want to move on to the issue of agriculture.
Hundreds of thousands of people in.
And in the Climate Action Plan we saw this week, Brid Smith, the least is being asked from the agriculture sector, although it's going to be far too much for the farmers who'll be protesting in 2 weeks' time in Dublin about it. I mean, it's all very well, isn't it, for the young farmers, for the people who can innovate, but what do we do for the many farmers who are getting on in years, who have small holdings and who feel they're being chased out of their livelihood?
Well, first of all, I think we should acknowledge that the strategy, the food strategy of On Board Bia, which the minister there was representing the interests of at COP, the food strategy of Teagasc and the Department of Agriculture, has forced a huge amount of farmers into desperation by telling them you must increase your herd or you're gone, get bigger or go. And now we find that the farmer you described, the 50-plus-year-old farmer in the west of Ireland, one of whom spoke very well yesterday on our protest in Dublin, are being told that they have to do the heavy loading. And it is really unfair to them. I think we should start by scrapping our food strategy. Now, that will sound off the wall and radical to the minister, I'm quite sure. But actually, when Leo Varadkar says we feed so many million people in the world, actually we're net importers of food. And we've got it all wrong. And we are driving the family farmer and the small farmer off their land by this strategy. What it does service, however, is big agri-business, the likes of Goodman, Kerry Co-op, all of the big agri-business structures who make billions of profit. But it doesn't service the small farmer, and we shouldn't be penalising them. We need to help them. And absolutely, the herd needs to be cut, it needs to be stabilised, all of the rest of it. But the load should not come down on the small and medium-sized and family farm. It should come down on agri-business who make a fortune from what has happened in this country, where the herd is out of proportion. They export beef to countries that never ate beef or dairy products, like the Middle East, like China. That was a deliberate food strategy by the state. It needs to be scrapped, and we need to look at it again and look after our farmers, who, after all, are the custodians of the land and will be the best at delivering the climate change for us.
We need to rethink our myth on this one. In terms of the methane cut, are we being under-ambitious here, Breeds? Are we, saying one thing in Glasgow? And what about, the various commitments that have been made at COP? Maybe they could bring global warming down to 1.8 degrees. That's if we believe Bolsonaro on the Amazon, if we believe the big coal-producing countries that they will be pure in future, if not yet.
Well, to quote Greta Thunberg on the blah, 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 the methane commitment by the Irish government in Glasgow to reduce methane by 30%, and then at the same time the Taoiseach says no, it'll only be by 10%. That is the best example of blah, 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 probably that came out of COP that we're familiar with. But I think whatever about the question, and it is a huge debate about our food strategy, it is off the wall to think that we can maintain the size of the herd that we have and not reduce our methane emissions. But the question is, where is the just transition for the farmers? And not the Larry Goodmans and the Dawn Meats and all the rest of it. Where is the just transition that will allow farmers to get their livelihoods, sustain the land, and live a sustainable production of whatever herd they have remaining? And there's no sign of any talk of that. The plan is so vague, and it is just regurgitating old announcements. But on the question of methane, absolutely hypocritical what the government have done. On the one hand, the announcement in Glasgow, and then come home and tell us, I know we're not.
You're being hypocritical on methane, and there's all of this switch for the moment. And Brid Smith, I know you were speaking at the march in Dublin yesterday, but this key promise or this key aspect that there has to be 80% of the emissions cuts coming from the switch to renewable energy, the fact that we don't have the legislation in place, there are problems with getting the grid brought up to date for the connections needed, and the industry is saying there's only 12 months to sort this out or you will not meet the targets. Are they right?
Well, I think it's a good parallel to draw between the broadband plan and what we need to do in terms of renewable energy. Because at the time when the broadband debacle was taking place, there was a whole range of issues around competitive tendering and who was going to get the contract, etc. And we warned at the time that unless this is a state-run, state-led, and not-for-profit project, that it would be messy, would be delayed, and probably wouldn't be delivered. And I think that's been proven right. And I would say the very same thing about renewable energy. I mean, in the 30s, 40s and 50s, the ESB, a state-run led investment company and a not-for-profit company, crucially, delivered electricity up and down the length and breadth of the country. And that's what we need to do again with renewables. We need state investment, a state-run led company, not-for-profit, not where you have queues of companies saying, I want this bit of the sea, I want the other bit of the ocean, I want that bit of the basin of the coast of Dublin or whatever, but the state actually planning how we're going to deliver these targets and running the renewable energy that we need. And I think that's very doable, and I think that is absolutely necessary to reach the targets.
But, you know, government wanting to go faster on the booster campaigns than the medical advice they're getting at the moment. Do you think more widespread booster campaign is the only way to avoid restrictions by Christmas?
I think we first have to look at what's happening in our hospitals. The INMO reported over 2,300 people on trolleys in the first week in November. That is just outrageous. Now, I know we have a trolley crisis every winter, but in the middle of COVID, with a lot of very sick people and the numbers rising, the government haven't even published their winter plan for the health service yet. This is outrageous, and something urgently needs to be addressed to look after the safety of patients and of the staff. What's happening here is out of control, and we've had time to plan for it. We've known that there would be a surge in the winter. They've said it all along, but my God, is there such a crisis happening now in our hospitals with people lying on trolleys and very, very sick people, that really the numbers going up like this makes it very, very scary for everybody, because not because the numbers are rising, but because we don't have the capacity or the plan to deal with what's going on. And then we have the outrageous situation in our schools, where we've utterly failed to implement proper policies on class sizes, on ventilation. You know, classrooms are sharing CO2 monitors. There's a huge shortage of substitute teachers. So, like, the two key elements of our society which hold it together, our health and education system, are in a disastrous situation, and it's not being addressed by the government. And I think that's the first thing we have to look at.
So, Minister, where is the winter plan?